stop thinking about empathy like it's some supernatural, spiritual, you're not a psychic. It's not an innate superpower. It is a set of skills that you can develop. I believe pretty much for any skill, if you practice it more, you'll get better. If you get better, you'll feel more successful. If you're more successful, you'll enjoy it more and want to practice it more, right? It's the natural reinforcement loop.
Welcome to the Find Your Influence podcast. This episode, proudly sponsored by the Guinea Group of Companies, an organisation that helps leaders upgrade their mindset, upskill their leadership, and uplift their teams. If you would like the opportunity to sponsor an episode of our podcast, please reach out to the team at the Guinea Group, theguineagroup.com.au, the team at theguineagroup.com.au. Can't wait to hear from you. And if you would like to be a podcast guest, click on the information sheet that is available on the podcast page.
Daniel Murray, Bachelor of Science, MBA exec, founder and CEO of Empathic Consulting, I love that word, and Australia's leading authority really on what the term strategic empathy really means, which is around the deliberate integration of empathy into leadership, culture and business strategy. That's pretty cool. What was really interesting was with the foundation in maths and a career in corporate strategy and management, Daniel brings a rare blend of analytical rigor and human-centered insight. He's observed many well-conceived strategies falter not due to numbers, but due to how people feel, engage, and lead. And that's what really drove Empathic Consulting, which is really interesting. It's about frustrated people leaders. I think that's who you focus on, who you work with, frustrated people leaders. And with that, over to Daniel Murray. And Daniel, what is a frustrated people leader? What have I missed, actually? Sorry.
Look, I don't think you've missed much other than the fact that part of the reason I got into doing what I do is I wasn't naturally empathic myself. I wasn't naturally good at understanding other people and, background in mathematics, probably not a big surprise that I'm very analytical and logically thinking. So for me, it was more of a challenge of how would people like me try and approach this idea of understanding people and the psychology and the reasons why people do what they do, the many varied, complex, often strange reasons why people do what they do. So that's sort of how I came at this, and what led me to this sort of place now is I guess my own frustration of seeing people do things and going, what's going on there? Like, what are they there for? Like, or that doesn't make any sense. Or, why didn't they just do what they were supposed to do?
Right.
And maybe if I can try and understand why they did what they did instead of just getting upset and frustrated, I'll have a better idea of how I can influence and change and drive outcomes.
Nice. Which leads into influence, which is the topic of our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the definition of influence, which is the ability to have an effect on, or the effect itself on, the behavior, the character, or the development of another human or system, which I think is just an amazing definition. And obviously there's this positive influence piece that we talk about. I don't want to have a negative influence on anyone, of course, which would be classed as manipulation, which is at the other end of the influence spectrum. Mate, you mentioned that once you work out why people do what they do, then you can sort of influence them to maybe make smarter decisions, more empathic decisions. Like what does that process look like? Are they, and I mentioned the word frustration before, are they frustrated with what they're doing? And like, where do you step in?
Sometimes. If we took an example of influencing change, maybe you're trying to implement some change in your organization, in a team, it could be a school, could be not-for-profit, it could be any sort of area where we know we have to keep adapting, changing, growing, transforming the way we do things because the world's complex. Some people want to do it the old way because it was comfortable.
Okay.
Some people don't want to do it the new way because it's scary. Some people don't want to do the new way because you have suggested they should. Some
It's
people
not
don't
their
want to
idea.
do, yeah, it's not their idea, or they don't trust you. Right? They don't trust who you are and who's trying to sell this to me. And so when you think about what stops people from, or why we need to influence people, one of the challenges I think we fall into is we'll often look at a behavior or look at someone doing something and think the reason why I would do that or the reason why I would justify that behavior is fill in the blank. And therefore they see that as their problem to solve. So for example, really simple, customer not buying my product
Okay.
must be because it's too expensive.
Oh.
Now I go and try and solve the too expensive problem with no real validity to say that that is actually the problem at all.
Gotcha. Yeah, right.
And we see this all the time in people
Right.
trying to transform and manage change. They solve the problem that isn't there, or they solve the wrong problem. And until you understand why people are why they're doing what they're doing, I'm sure you've seen this too, Anton. I've worked with lots of people who they're frustrated because their customers aren't buying a product. They reduce the price. The customer still goes somewhere else and pays more. And so they're solving the wrong problem. If you don't understand what the problem is, you don't understand what's driving people, then
Right.
influence is very difficult.
Right. And so how do you get to the root cause then, Daniel? How do you get to the point where you can really understand what problem it is that you need to solve to put the right change process in place?
So this is where when I designed this empathy process, so for me,
Yes.
there wasn't I couldn't find a process for empathy. I couldn't
Right.
find a sort of a step-by-step guide. It was all sort of, here's some ideas, here's some fluffy things you could try. But I built sort of a process. And the first part of the process is to be what we call consciously curious.
Oh, I
And
love
so
that.
the concept here is I have assumptions, I have
Mm.
beliefs, I have my own experiences, heuristics, mental models, whatever you want to call them. And I generally use those
Yeah.
when I'm looking at someone to understand them.
Right.
But if those aren't right, then I'm measuring with the wrong sort of device here, aren't I? And so
Right.
consciously curious is saying, I'm going to try and park as many of those things as I can, put them aside, and I just want to start with a blank sheet of paper and just observe and understand. I'm curious, don't know, I'm interested, I want to find out more, and I just want to gather as much information as I can.
Uh-huh.
And some of that will be tangible data. It'll be
Right.
facts, it'll be numbers, stuff you can put in a spreadsheet. Some of
Yeah.
that will be emotion. Some of
Yeah.
that will be stories and
Mm.
belief systems and things that you
Yeah.
can't really measure,
That's it.
but gee, they're important.
Uh-huh.
So, that's I think the trying to get to the root cause is hard.
Right.
As a mathematician, it hurts me to say this, but
Yeah.
there isn't always an underlying fact base that exists. Sometimes it is a bit messy. It is a bit sort of grey and fuzzy and chaotic, but that's humans. That's okay. That's what we are. And this is why I think empathy is a very human skill set, because spreadsheets aren't good at wading through that mess. Humans are. Humans are very good at wading through that mess. So we need to develop that skill.
Love that. So really, the consciously curious piece is around parking your bias, parking your conditioning, and I love heuristics, and I love all of the biases, confirmation bias and anchor bias, and all those other things that we can be locked into when we're trying to connect with another human that are impacting our ability to understand them.
Yeah. And look, I would also say those things aren't necessarily bad. Assumptions
Yeah,
are really, really useful. Without them,
that's
we'd
right.
be stuffed, right?
Yeah.
You need to make assumptions lots of the time. And
Uh,
as I talk about in the book, you shouldn't. I don't recommend you try and have empathy with everyone all the time. It's exhausting.
oh, right.
Right? Imagine if every time you spoke with someone, with anyone, you had this sort of infinite bucket of curiosity you needed to fill, and You just didn't make any assumptions about anyone. Oh, is it a red light or is it not a red light? Maybe I should. All those things don't work out very well. It's about being selective with it, and it's about
Right,
doing it when you need to, and then putting real effort into it so you can
right.
get the most out of those interactions.
Wow. And so the interactions that matter are obviously for leaders who you and I both coach, are
Mhm.
leaders and their teams,
Yep.
probably leaders and their peers,
Yep.
and then
Um,
leaders and their leaders.
Absolutely. And look, it can sometimes be really useful. Um, I'm sure you come across this, Anton. When I
Uh,
work with teams, some teams, not all, but some teams can have a less than generous idea of why their boss does a certain thing or makes
right.
certain decisions. Working in
Yeah.
government agencies, you often get them going, "Oh, those people up there,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
oh,
Yeah, yeah,
they."
yeah. Yeah. No one knows
Um,
what we do in our jobs and blah, 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 blah.
Exactly. They're just making silly decisions up there, trying to make our life hard. As I say to people, it's rare that someone sits there and goes, "I'm really going to try and make someone else's life difficult with this thing."
That's right.
Um, but it can be really useful for a team to say, "Well, instead of jumping to a conclusion as to why they've made us do this, I wonder what else could be going on. What else
Wow.
could be happening in their world?" So
Wow.
it can work in every direction, and it can be
Uh-huh.
very useful as a tool. Um,
Uh-huh.
I think that the challenge many
Mm.
people have is assumptions are fast, they're easy, and they're comfortable.
Right.
We take great comfort from saying, "Oh, isn't such and such, aren't they terrible at their job? Or aren't they, aren't they narcissistic?" It's one that we throw this word
Oh,
around a lot.
love it. Love it.
"Oh, they're such a narcissist." And then someone
Mm.
else says to me, "Oh, yeah, I think they're a narcissist too." And our little brains go, "Oh, we must be right because we agree and we feel
Ah,
good." And we
that's
get into
right.
this comfort assumption rather
Right.
than, hey, what is, maybe there's more complex things going on.
Mm.
Let's explore.
Comfortable, not real sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
I love that. Love that. So when we're talking about influence then, I feel like as a leader who's trying to influence someone else, there has to be a level of conscious curiosity. And I think that's the being interested in someone else. And I think, you would have heard the saying, Stephen Covey, listen to understand, not to respond and not to reply.
Mhm.
But I like what you said, what else could be happening? So there's sort of, and that's again, that conscious curiosity. There's like an interrogation said with the best intent. And to find out, you need to ask a couple of deep questions to find out what is going on and what is happening and why people are doing what they're doing. And
Absolutely.
uh,
Um, y- One of the things with, if we think about influence, one way you could think about it is we're trying to, as you talked about earlier, move someone to another state, to another
Mhm.
position, another thought, another belief, another action, right? If you're going to move any object, if you look around your office, you're going to move any object, the first thing you need to know is where it is now. Very hard to move something if you don't know where it is now. Yet this is so overlooked when it comes to things like change management, things like creating influence and moving people, is
Wow.
we focus so much on where we want them to go to,
Right. We don't understand where they are now.
we don't know where they are now.
I
And if
love
you
that.
don't know where they are, if you don't know where that coffee mug is now, if you've lost your glasses,
That's
where you
right.
want them to be, irrelevant,
That's
right?
right. I love that.
The only
Mm.
thing, the most important thing to start with is where are they now? And, if you say, "Oh, I want people to be, more engaged, or I want
Mm.
them to embrace,
Mm.
I want them to be more resilient."
Right.
Okay, cool. What does that look like? But
Yeah.
where are they today?
Where are they starting?
Where are they starting? And then
Wow.
if they're not starting in the same places, maybe we need
Mm.
to treat them differently when we're trying to get that
Mm.
motion. I
I
mean,
love that.
it seems sort of obvious, but we focus so much on what we want, where we want to get them, and not enough on them and where they are and how we
At the
can
moment.
start.
I like that. So how do you get a feel for that? How do you, as a great leader or as a great team member, how do you get a feel for where someone is? It more questioning? Is it more sort of understanding? Like, what's the skill?
I think there's a lot of pieces to it, and it's rarely one thing.
Right.
When you coach leaders, I'm sure it's the same. It's rarely they need a can opener, you give them a can.
That's right.
But when I think about if I want to understand someone, yeah, absolutely, asking good questions, open questions is a wonderful tool.
Yeah.
The caveat to that is if they don't trust you, you might not get very good answers. Right?
Right. You got to be trusted first. I
Of
love
course.
that. Right.
And in some ways I'd say, well, that seems obvious.
It
But
does.
again,
Does,
how
but it's
many
important.
times, when I talk to leaders about trust, trust is one of these words that we throw around. Everyone goes, oh, yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
If I was to say, what's the definition of it? Oh, okay. Gets a bit harder now, right?
Why not?
And then the other thing I often we'll talk about here is when we think about the word trust, we generally look out and think, who do I trust? And I think as a leader who wants to build empathy, the better question is, who trusts me?
Oh,
Turn the arrows around. Who looks at me and says, you're a safe pair of hands. You're someone I can rely on. You're the safe harbor when things go sideways. I can be
confidential.
vulnerable in front of you, right?
Nice.
Um,
Wow.
and when you have that, asking questions becomes a whole different ballgame.
Yeah. You built
And
it.
we all know this is true, right?
Yeah.
When the cashier at Woolies says, how's your day going? You don't give them an honest answer, right? It's a transaction. I don't
That's
trust or
right.
know this person. I know they don't really care.
Get
I'm
that.
not about to tell them about, the diagnosis my auntie's got or whatever. None of that's going to happen.
That's right.
And so as a leader, when you sort of say, how do we start? How do we understand people?
Yeah.
You can't just turn up one day and start asking them to share personal stuff and expect to get anywhere.
That's right. That's right. I
Spend
love
time
that.
with people. Be reliable. Sit with them. Have
Time.
experience with time and exposure with them and
Yeah.
demonstrate you care about them.
100%. So many leaders misunderstand or miss the mark on spending time with their team. They don't do the one-on-ones. They don't have a cadence with their team. They don't value that as much as their team members do. And one-on-ones are not for the leader. Leaders think they're doing one-on-ones for them. One-on-ones are for team members. Team members that don't know how they're progressing
Yep.
are fearful. And I think leaders, a lot of leaders don't do one-on-ones. And when you can get a leader to do a one-on-one, I've never ever had one come back and say, gee, I wish I didn't do that. And it's that time together that, radical candor, care personally before you challenge directly. And the care piece is just time, right?
Yep.
And I think that's how you can demonstrate, like, let's get back to your topic of empathy and influencing maybe through empathy. I'm really intrigued by, your work and work from a mathematician to an empathic human. I love
Yep.
that. Let me give you a scenario. So this is not. So here's two scenarios. First one is, we work with a lot of engineers. We work with a lot of technical people, and some of them have very high level degrees and high level qualifications in very technical areas. And
Yes.
a lot of them are looking for influence skills, which is where the topic of influence and this podcast came from. And part of that, some of those conversations, and I've had one of these very recently, was Anton, from an engineer. Anton, I was born without empathy. I would like to be empathetic. What do I do? And I'd love to know how. And you've probably had that conversation with someone as well over time. What's the answer to that question? Is there I know it's a big, 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 big question, but how would you answer that?
So, firstly, that's what the book's for. So that, without plugging the book too, but
I love
exactly,
it.
but that's exactly why I wrote the book, was because I wanted a practical, process-driven way that anyone can look at empathy. So the first thing I'd say to the person is, stop thinking about empathy like it's some supernatural, spiritual. You're not
Oh,
a psychic. You
right.
know, none of those things. It's not an innate superpower. It
Right.
is a set of skills that you can develop. No
Yeah.
one is born brilliant at the guitar. You know, for my
Right.
engineering friends, no one is born brilliant at maths.
Right.
What you do have is some predispositions to certain ways in which your brain might prefer to function and not function, right? But um,
Right.
I became good at maths because I couldn't read very well, right?
Oh, so you
That was
didn't get
why.
English, you went to maths.
Yeah, I found English hard. I had eye tracking issues. Didn't like reading. Maths, no reading, and therefore I continued to do more of it. I was successful. I
Right.
got better at it, etc. And I
Wow.
believe pretty much for any skill, if you practice it more, you'll get better.
Of
If
course.
you get better, you'll feel more successful. If you're more successful, you'll enjoy it more and want to practice it more. Right? It's the natural reinforcement loop.
Hmm.
So when someone says I'm not naturally, I'm not naturally empathetic, what they're probably saying is I'm not yet skilled
In that
at
area.
asking good questions, at sitting in the silence. I think this is, there's no one problem that analytical people have, Anton, but I think is a couple
Mm.
that I would definitely say I've experienced. And as an
Mm.
analytical person myself, and
Mm.
I like you, work with engineers and financial people
Of course.
and mining executives and all sorts of different groups.
Mm. Uh-huh.
One of the things I think analytical people do well is solve problems. But because we're good at looking for solutions to problems, we often look at people as if they are problems to solve rather than interesting systems to understand.
I love that. I love
And
that.
and I want to change I want to use that term systems to understand, not because I want to simplify humans down into some sort of, robotic process, but because analytical people, they know that there are complex systems around us and that complexity is interesting if we dive into it and try and explore it. And that's, I think, the pathway to empathy is to think this is a complex system that I'm dealing with here of people and emotions and beliefs. And there's a whole world of stuff there. If I can
Wow.
look at it that way, maybe I can start exploring it and stop looking for purely logical systems, purely logical pathways through this system.
Wow.
There are psychological ones. Um, I don't know. Have you come across? I love the work of Rory Sutherland. He's a
Mm.
marketing guru, and
Right.
he often says there are lots of logical problems in the world, and we've solved lots of them. There are lots of problems that we've thrown logic at and never been able to solve them. Maybe they're not logical problems. Maybe they're psychological problems. Or you need to think of the psychological solutions for them and therefore understand them more. Um, and like a really simple one in the context of influence. I see this all the time. People think, I want you to work harder. Therefore, I want to pay you more. Because
Yeah, that's
logically,
right.
if you get more reward that's monetary, you'll work harder.
Effort should go up.
We know that that's
That doesn't
completely
work.
untrue.
That's right.
The only correlation you'll find that has really strong, robust foundation is if you don't pay them enough or what they
That's
think is fair, it matters huge amounts. As soon as you hit the fair line, God knows where
right.
that is. It changes all the time for people, right? But as soon as you hit the fair line, every other dollar is pretty much wasted.
And Maslow worked that out in 1943. And
Exactly right.
hygiene factors versus motivators. I love it.
Absolutely. What motivates people and what drives performance is meaningful work. Is you care about my work, I care about my work, you care about me. You think you tell me I'm a good person.
Uh,
You make sure that my work is purposeful and meaningful, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that we know works. Then again, if you're a leader and you think I've kept throwing money at this and it doesn't work, then don't blame them when it's not working, right?
blame psychology.
Exactly right. It'd be like saying, this machine, we keep lubricating it and it keeps stopping. Well,
Yeah,
maybe it's not a lubrication problem, guys. Maybe it's something else. Start looking for other issues.
love it.
And I
I
think it's
love
the same with humans, right?
That's right.
the hard thing is that humans are probably the most complex system you'll ever have to
Oh,
deal with.
oh, big time. And you would
Right?
have heard this. Geez, I wish there was a calculation for humans.
My favorite quote is, "I really like leadership. If only there wasn't so many people
That's right.
involved."
Common,
Uh,
common. I love it.
yeah.
Mate, that is amazing. Now, you made you made a comment before. You talked about empathy. Buy the book, which I'm gonna. Thank you. And I'm going to give it to this person. I'm going to share this podcast with that particular person who had that discussion recently. And the first thing you said was sitting in silence. You know, when Brene Brown describes empathy, she calls it sitting in the mud with someone else.
Yep.
And I love that, because for me, a lot of humans struggle because emotion's so contagious. If someone else is hurting, a lot of people struggle to be in the moment. They don't know what to say. If someone told you they got cancer, people don't know what to say. If someone says, my mum just died, but they don't know what to say, and what does that sitting in silence mean for you from an empathetic perspective?
I think it means a bunch of things. One of them is, and I think this is where some analytical people have a great advantage,
Right.
because people who are incredibly who take that contagion, that emotional contagion on board. So there are people who, when someone else is sad, it overwhelms them with sadness, right? Mirror neurons, whatever goes crazy. And sometimes that's, it can be comforting to the other person, but it's rarely useful, right? We've got one person that's sad. Now we've got two people that's sad. Okay. If I peel back from a leadership perspective, I want you to understand my experience. You don't have to have it. I need you to understand it so you can make decisions to help me through it. But you don't need to necessarily feel depressed to help me to get out of my depression. What's better for you is to understand what's driving me. And so, I think when people sit in the silence, sitting with the curiosity still, sitting there thinking, wow, that's interesting. Wonder what might be going on for that person. Maybe even asking that. Someone says, "Oh, I've got cancer." Oh, shit. Oh, no.
What's
That's,
that like?
yeah. How are you feeling? Like, talk to me through what's going on for you at the moment. What are some of the challenges that have, just ask an open question. What we too often do is, you're right, we feel uncomfortable and we either want to be relatable. Oh, yeah, my auntie had cancer. We divert and try and move somewhere else. Yeah. Oh, well, it'll be okay. We try and comfort, which is usually useless comfort. Oh, you'll be fine. Everything will be okay. Just stay positive. Right.
Or the worst is, oh, I understand. No, you don't.
That's right. Yeah.
When you haven't had cancer or something like that.
No, but even if you haven't had theirs in
No,
this.
that's right.
One of the things, Anton, I talk about is empathy. We should stop thinking about empathy as walking in someone else's shoes, because when you walk in someone else's shoes, you have your experience in their situation. You don't have theirs. At best, you have your experience in theirs. You don't have their experience. Empathy is what's their experience, what's going on for them.
Because
If I think
everything's individual.
of course, if I think of a really relatable sort of example might be addiction. If you've never had an addiction, then you can't possibly understand what it's like for someone who does.
Correct.
And you can try and understand what's driving them, but you won't experience what's going on for them. And maybe you don't have to. But understanding their experience and understanding what's driving them is really where you want to spend your time. Because that's the context. If, again, go back to influence, if I don't know where they are, how can I move them?
I can't move the needle.
Exactly.
So in saying that, Daniel, help for our listeners out there and our viewers, help them unpack, if you could, pretty please, from an empathic perspective, that a lot of people think that, so you've said don't walk in their shoes because it's actually your shoes you're walking in. At the same time, we've got to try and understand where they're coming from. Like, is there a skill? Is there a mindset? is there something like a lot of people, it seems natural to say, I'll walk in their shoes because that will give me an understanding. I'll try to take their perspective maybe. Like what advice do you have for people where you say, well, I can't walk in their shoes, at the same time you still got to understand where they're coming from? There's a dichotomy there.
Well, I think the break is, don't jump too quickly to go, well, that would make me sad. If I was sad, I will do, or I would do this. So I think there's an element of trying to understand. It is trying to go, well, tell me about your experience. So tell me about what's going on for you. Maybe we've got someone, we're working on a big project, right? And there's lots of moving parts. It's really complex. And you're getting really enthusiastic about, oh, this is so good. We're going to make a big change. I can see the milestones are going to get ticked off. I'm getting really pumped up about it. The person next to me is starting to fizzle, right? They're struggling and they're feeling overwhelmed.
Right.
Now, me going, what's wrong with you? You should be amped up. You should be energetic.
Get pumped.
It helps not one bit. Or my favorite, you just need to toughen up. We can get through this, right? Just harden up. You'll be fine.
That's right. Teaspoon of cement.
Yeah, that's right. So better thing to go is, hey, I notice you're feeling that, you're seeming like you're falling down a bit. You're struggling. What's going on? You're right.
Yeah, that's right. What's happening?
What's happening for you?
Right.
And they might go, oh, that meeting the other day, man, I was really worried about that. And you go, oh, that's interesting. I was actually quite energized by that. Talk me through why you were that way. Let's talk about it. Let's unpack that. And look, you might find that they'll say something and you go, oh, wow, I didn't even look at it that way.
Didn't see that.
Never saw that, never thought about it that way. That's really interesting. You might say, well, I actually saw the same situation in this way. And I'm not saying you should, but this is the way I saw it. Let's share some perspectives and, map this out together.
Love that. Thank you. So where I think for our listeners, we went there was, you said, you don't have to feel what they're feeling. So I think the challenge that a lot of people have is they think that sympathy is empathy.
Yes.
I think we've got to separate those two, because feeling someone else's pain and is really feeling sorry for them, Daniel. And I think we don't want to, someone's got cancer. It's hard not to be sympathetic, but I think we got to get past that and go, well, you know what, this is okay. This is their situation, not mine. So let me find out more. And I have a belief that if people tell you something personal, they want to go on a journey with you and they're happy to tell you more. So that's my belief. So therefore, I'll engage more if they're. But I think if we can get out of sympathy, and I think the word that you said right at the end, then perspective is important, because I think perception versus perspective is a really, really key sort of juxtaposition, because I think perception is what you think, whereas perspective is what they think. And I think if you can, again, put that perception aside and ask for their perspective, I think you open your mind up a little bit. Am I on the right track there? Am I trying to?
I think you're right. No, I think that's exactly right. Your perception is your assumption. It could be right.
Yeah, that's right.
Might be useful. Might be wrong. It might be completely useless. It might even be more hurtful than that. Again, I see someone who's they're throttling back in their work a little bit. Right? They're pulling back a little bit, or they're spending longer in the bathroom than usual, or whatever. Right? I see that behavior.
Good awareness.
Now the question is, what's driving the behavior? Now, in my mind, I might go, maybe they're a bit lazy. Maybe they're slacking off. Make the assumption. The assumption might fit the behavior sometimes. I might have even seen other people who proved after time, in hindsight, I could go back and look at it and say, yes, they did that behavior because they were lazy or they were getting a job somewhere else. I used that experience.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's real for this person in this moment. And if I use the assumption, again, this is the way I see this play out. I see the person, the behavior, and I think, wow, they're just slacking off. And they're a bit lazy now. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to treat them as if they're a lazy person, and I'm going to get a bit harder on them. I get a bit harder on them. They then pull back further, because actually what's going on for them is something totally different, and they feel the way I'm treating them is completely unfair.
Yeah.
And we start to
And you've just broken a relationship, really.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Instead of going, hey, I've noticed you're slowing down. Or the other thing people do is say nothing. I'll just leave them alone. I don't have an uncomfortable conversation, so I'll say nothing and hope it all gets better.
That's right.
Instead of going, hey, let me just talk to you. I've noticed, you've been coming in late a bit lately. I imagine something's going on. What's up? You're right. What's going on?
Nice.
Then let's explore. I'm just curious. Now I can still. It's absolutely okay for me to still continue that conversation with, hey, it's not acceptable. That behavior is not okay. We can't have people coming in. We need you here on time, and I want to make sure you are here on time. But I can still have the empathy to try and understand what's actually going on first.
Right. I like that. So really what you've done is when you're asking these questions, you're really taking the accusation out of it. You're really taking you're wrong, you're doing something that is hurtful, bad, whatever, to hold on a second. What's driving this? I love the word where you said, I'm noticing this. What's driving that?
Yeah.
And then
Sorry, I think it's really the I notice is important because what you want to be talking about is objective behaviors.
Yeah, of course, the behavior. Yeah.
Right. If I say to someone, hey, I notice you've been a bit lazy lately, that's not an objective behavior. That's
subjective.
Your judgment, right?
Absolutely.
Or I notice you're letting the team down.
Oh. They're crap comments, aren't they, really? Because they're so subjective. Well,
exactly.
Because that other person doesn't believe that. And to influence someone, you got to change belief system, and that's the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
But at the other end of the scale is, there's consequences, outcomes, and I've noticed this outcome of your behavior to a degree. If you're late, this is, you miss the team meeting and therefore you don't get the information that you need.
Yep. There's consequences, right? And again,
I was going to say that,
it's absolutely okay. And I actually think critical to talk about the consequences of bad behaviors, to talk about, even if they're not driven by bad reasons, you're still going to talk about them. Hey, look, I noticed you haven't spoken up or asked any questions in the last couple of team meetings. And, I imagine you're holding back because you're not sure. You're missing. Talk to me. What's going on? What's going on there? You're not asking questions gives me a perception that you're disinterested. And that might not be true, but I just want to understand what's going on. And I want to encourage you going forward to ask questions when you're not sure, because that's the way we get more information together.
Psychological safety.
I'm here for you. But I need to talk to you about the behavior because it's destructive and we need to improve it.
Because, and what I love about that example that you just used then, Daniel, was, in a psychologically safe team, people feel free to speak up. Now, this is the leader challenge. When a leader asks that question, which I've had leaders ask that question, and then they come to coaching and they say, Anton, they told me that I suck as a leader because I don't give them airspace and they don't speak up because I don't listen and they don't feel heard. And the leader goes, what? How am I not making them feel heard? And I go, well, let's play through that scenario. So as leaders, we've got to be really aware of our own behavior. And when we ask these big questions, we've got to be aware that we might not get it might not be it might be uncomfortable. We might get feedback that we need to take on board and change something to influence that behavior, which I think that's the feedback loop, right?
Exactly right. It comes back to that thing we talked about really early on. If I don't have the trust, then it doesn't matter. And, this is, as a leader, one of the things I'd run sessions on giving hard feedback with empathy. And there's a formula and there's ways you can do it. But if they don't trust you, it doesn't matter how well you word it, right? This is the classic. I go into my team. All right, anyone can ask any question. Go. No one asked any question, therefore they don't have any questions. Idiot, right? No, they've got questions. They're just too scared to ask.
That's right.
And again,
and I feel safe to ask.
Exactly. And Anton, one of the things I find in the heavy industries in particular, but all across analytical worlds, is analytical people can, when stress gets turned on, get very clinical, very black and white.
Absolutely.
And that can feel like from the other seat from the outside, that can feel like a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde personality, right?
Yeah,
Really
yeah.
nice. I'm your bestie. Let's share a beer or cupcakes, whatever. And then next minute, like it's just this hard shift, and they're going to come down on me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah,
Now,
that's right.
the reason why Jekyll and Hyde leaders have so much issue is the story in their head is, on average, I'm pretty good. Right? Most of the time. So they look at these good times and they go, "See, I'm good here. I'm awesome. How good a boss? I bought prawns for like Christmas. What's going on? Like, I'm wonderful." Right? So their story is, most of the time, I'm really good and I do generous things, so I'm a good leader. The story in the people who work for them is, you never know what you're going to get. There's high levels of uncertainty. I just don't know which one's going to show up at any moment. And the uncertainty creates feelings in me of,
Anxiety.
Anxiety, better play it safe, better hold back. Should I ask a question in that team meeting or hold it? I'll probably just hold. I'll wait until after. I'll ask someone else. Should I walk into their office and say something or send an email? Bugger it, I'll send an email. Halfway through the email, maybe I won't say anything at all. This might blow up on me.
Mate, one of the skills, and I'm going to hold this pencil up very deliberately. One of the things that people tell us, and you would have heard this, consistency. Leaders that are not consistent are not successful. And what we mean by, and you would have seen this, and I'm guessing, Daniel, that you've experienced this in the past too, maybe from leaders that you've had. Leaders that go up and down are so difficult to deal with. And this is what we know, and you'd know this statistic. So we used to have the Lasada line in our interpersonal relationships, which is for every crappy interaction, you've got to have 2.9 good ones to sort of to make your significant other, bring them back into the fold and make them happy again. At work, it's 5. So for every negative interaction, you need 5 good ones to repair the damage from the one thing that you've given yourself permission to be a crappy leader on. And that's this inconsistency. And I'd never heard it put like that most leaders think, well, on the balance, I'm okay.
And I think that's an important thing for us to step into. Again, when I think of influence, we've got to drink our own medicine here, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important for us to understand where they are as leaders, what's holding them. Few leaders turn up every day going, I'm just going to be a grumpy, whatever, and annoy everyone. No one does that. Right?
No,
Very
that's
few
right.
people. They're coming in with all the pressure and stress and stuff going on for them. So let's meet them where they are.
Nice.
I think a lot of the times they have that issue that on the whole, I'm pretty good. But what they don't see is that inconsistency destroys trust. And look, it doesn't, and this is where leaders say to me, oh, so should I have a team day and put on some cupcakes and muffins? I'm like, no, because in essence, that doesn't fit you either. That's an inconsistency in the other direction. And people are going to go, well, what is he buttering us up for? It's like we're about to get taken out to the farm and we're getting the steak for our last dinner sort of thing.
Love it.
So, I look at a leader like last year I spoke at a conference and Wayne Bennett was speaking after me, and a lot of your leaders would know Wayne Bennett. He's notoriously grumpy. He even said, he made a joke, I went into a bar and the bartender said, it was happy hour just started, and the bartender said, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. And he said, what are you talking about? He said, well, happy hour's just started and we think you're going to wreck it. He's a notoriously grumpy person.
It is.
But here's the thing. He's always like that.
Right.
Everyone that plays for him, everyone that works for him, everyone that interacts with him, they get the same thing. They get the consistency. And look, he does build really deep personal relationships with his players. He does build really good, strong relationships with his staff. There's no doubt that he's a good man leader. But he doesn't, it's not one day it's like fairy floss, the next day I'm coming down like a ton of bricks. It's consistent.
That's right.
And I think a lot of leaders can bring more of that into their leadership.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I love that so much. Now, I love, Daniel, where we've gone today with the empathy and the link to leadership. And I think the biggest thing that you have mentioned a few times is this word trust. And it's really, I think, that care personally is about time. And the more
Mm,
time you spend with someone, the more time you get to develop that trust. And I think, let me ask you this very quick question on trust before I ask you just about, you know, what leadership means to you, for example. But I always say for leaders, the thing that they need to trust the most is their ability to respond, not react. Leaders need to trust themselves
mhm.
before they can even ask for trust. You can't get something until you've got it yourself already. Yeah, you can't,
Yeah.
love another human until you've got some self-love. And I'd love to know your take on that. Like, that's what makes leaders inconsistent, their inability to respond because they are very reactive.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, absolutely. The thing, and again, make it sort of practical. The thing I think leaders don't spend enough time thinking about is what do they
Mm.
really stand for? What are their values? What are their guiding principles? Or what are the
Mm.
underlying uh, commitments they make? And so, whether it be working in organizations or with individuals, and I wrote a book on this as well.
Mm.
Most values are 5 words. They're nice
Mm.
words. They're things
Mm.
like integrity and honesty and
Accountability, respect, yeah, all
yeah,
that.
those sorts of
The
things.
global values, yeah.
Yeah, which I would say, my I often make the joke, Anton, if you have to tell me you've got to have integrity, I'm worried that you probably don't.
That's right. Love
you
that.
know,
Love
it's a
that.
given. It should be a
That's
given,
right.
right?
Should be good. Yeah.
I've never seen a company or an individual that says, "My value is legal. I comply with the law." But they all do. So
Good.
why don't you say
That's
it?
right.
Because it's a
That's
given.
right.
So when I'm thinking about values, I want leaders to push down to like how would someone describe you as a leader? What are the values upon which, or the guiding principles upon which you make decisions,
Wow.
which you demonstrate behavior? And what this does is it starts to create a framework for me
Mm.
to think, what are those, if I'm
Mm.
going to trust myself, I have to fit within these commitments. A really powerful exercise is to take some of those values and write sentences that start with, and this is in the book, but start with the
Mm.
words, I will always or I will never. Now, again, if I say to my team, my people come first. I want to be a people-oriented leader. I really want to look after my people. I go, cool, sounds nice, good for you. Does
What's
that
that mean?
mean I will never cancel a one-on-one that's booked in with one of my team members? Because if I say to my people they come first, then someone invites me out for a drink or a lunch, and I go, yeah, I got to cancel my one-on-one because I want to go and do the fun stuff. All that I say to my people is, I told you that you come first, and then I demonstrated that you don't.
Great
How can they
example.
trust you now, right? Well,
Love
why
it.
would they trust you?
Love it.
And so, becoming a leader worth following, I think, is really this idea of here's what you can expect of me. Here's what I stand for. Here's who I am,
That's
and
right.
I'm going to hold myself accountable to these things. Therefore, I'll create that consistency for you. So to close that loop on the self trust, it's all fine to say, "Oh, I trust myself." I go,
Yeah.
bullshit.
Ah.
Demonstrate it. Show me.
Demonstrated behavior. Love it. And I love where you said, go and ask people how they experience you as a leader, because the words that you get will demonstrate what your values are, because your values drive your behavior. So
Yes,
if you
exactly.
don't know what your value set is, people will tell you what your
Yeah,
value set is, because they'll see the words they give you. They'll say to you, well, you're high integrity, or you're honest, or you're accountable, or you're
yeah,
respectful, or whatever. They're global value words, but they're big ones that
yeah.
people understand. When people give you that, well, yep, I'm showing up in the right way. You know, for us, we've got energy, engagement, and enterprise thinking. And so, I'll always show up energetically. I'll always, be engaging in workshops, for example. We had a full day workshop yesterday. And then the enterprise thinking, I'm always thinking about business, your business, my business, and how I'll buy a book off you, for example. And,
Yeah.
um, you sort of, and that's why those values are a bit unique to our business, because they're a little bit different,
Hmm.
and energy energy is a big thing because as I get older, I used to have bucket loads of natural energy, but as you get older, you sort of probably wane a bit, and you've got to work out the ways. So I think if you don't do enough work on your values as a leader, you'll never be able to lead into them. And
Yep.
if you're leading with the wrong values set, people notice that, and they'll be able to tell you, well, you're not responsive. You are not committed to your schedule. Like all those sorts of things. What's your leadership mantra? Goal. What's leadership mean to you?
There's so many pieces in there, and I think influence is a critical part of it. I think making sure your focus is how do I change, how do I influence, how do I support people. But
Nice.
I think that the hardest step for people need to make, and the mindset shift they need to make in leadership. And I think this is, I work with a lot of emerging leaders. I do emerging leaders programs for
Yep.
CBA and DFK and a bunch of other companies. The big change I think you need to make is when you're a good worker, like let's say you're an engineer, an accountant, you take great pride in the work you do. You look at the work and go, ha, look what I made. How good's that? Isn't this awesome? Look at me. I'm great. And everyone claps and applauds and look at, I'm amazing. I did great work. When you move to becoming a leader, you have to shift from pride in the work to pride in the people who do the work. And your pride is in the people now. Now, what I think happens, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, Anton, I think a lot of people step into leadership and they go, I want to keep doing the work.
That's right. Agreed.
I'm going to look at how they do the work. I'm going to judge it on whether I would do it that way. I'm going to tell them how to do it. I'm going to micromanage them to do it. I'm going to do all this stuff that actually focuses back on the wrong thing.
Beautiful.
I need to get away from the work to the people. I take pride in the people. I'm here to serve the people, and the people are the ones that I take if my people are doing well, I'm doing great. My people are failing, I'm failing. And so I have to make that mindset shift. And I think that shift is the hardest one that I often see people struggle with when they're going through that promotion process. That's why a lot of leaders trip when they hit that, they get promoted and next minute all the people are a nightmare. I wish I could just go back to doing the work, all those sorts of things that take place. I think that at the heart of it is this mindset shift to my job is about helping and supporting building people.
I love it. I'm going to do a reel today or a little short video and I'm going to give you credit for this and shout you out on the reel. So I'll tag you in that post when it comes up. Leadership is about the pride shift from being proud of your work to being proud of your team.
Yeah, I think it's a really important one. It's bloody hard.
Daniel, that's the goal. That's the gold in this session. We've talked empathy, we've talked influence. I always say influence is the first level of leadership, impact's the next, if you can impact someone and make a difference for their life. But then the third level is inspire or inspiration. If you can inspire them to want to be greater than themselves or better than where they are now, because inspire is that breathing into, and for someone to see, looking at you, what's possible. If someone looks at you and says, geez, that you've emulated something and look, maybe I could aspire to that, I think that's level 3 of leadership. But Daniel Murray, you have been amazing. Now, the question, the biggest question, the hottest question on everyone's lips that are watching this, because I ask this every podcast episode. Who is the next human you think I should get on to this podcast and have another great chat with, pretty please? Could you introduce me to one or more humans that would be great guests, pretty please?
I can. There's a bunch, but I think there's a wonderful human, Rhonda Brighton Hall. Do you know? I don't know if you've come across Rhonda before. No. She's an incredible people leader. She has done a huge amount of work in people and culture and thinks about it deeply. And I think she'd be a good person to talk around influence with. I think she'd be great.
Love your work, Daniel. See you, bro.
See you. Bye.
Thanks for listening. We just had an amazing guest on to another amazing podcast of Find Your Influence. My name's Anton Guinea, and for 20 years I have been sitting working with, training, coaching and consulting leaders at all levels of organizations. I've coached Gen Z leaders right through to baby boomer leaders. I've done 1,500 one-on-one leadership coaching sessions. My mission on this planet is to help leaders create high-performing and psychologically safe teams. If you want to upgrade your leadership, upskill your teams, or upskill your leadership, please reach out. You can get me at anton@theguineagroup.com.au. Please tune into our next episode. These podcast chats are amazing. The value and the information that you get will help you be more influential and help you be a better leader.